Hello, I'm Adrian, and welcome to the latest episode of the original Fight Scene Breakdown. On this series, we take an in-depth look at fight sequences. I've already made over 60 episodes, and the full playlist is available in the description below. Today, we're going to be breaking down the final fight sequence in Eternals. You probably gathered this from the title, but just in case you've made it this far into the video, I will warn you that there will be major spoilers from this point forward. If you haven't seen the film, it's available on Disney+. What's pretty impressive about this final fight sequence is that it essentially acts as the entire third act. The only thing going on from this point forward in the film is the Eternals trying to fight various battles at the same time. Not only are most of the Eternals trying to stop a Celestial from being born and destroying the entire planet, they are also fighting one of the most powerful members of their team, Ikaris, written with a K and an I as opposed to C and a U. And at one point, Thena, without an A in the beginning, fights a fully evolved deviant known as Crow. Unfortunately, Kingo pieces out before the final battle begins, as he considers Ikaris to be an S-tier fighting game character not even worth trying to battle, so we are not able to see Kingo in action for the final sequence. In terms of stakes, the fight absolutely delivers. They are fighting for the entire human race, as well as trying to prevent the planet from literally exploding. In terms of story, while it is awesome to see most of the Eternals fight amongst each other in prolonged sequences, it kind of distracted from who was being set up as the primary antagonist of the film, Crow. Throughout the movie, great attention was paid to how Crow had been absorbing power after power and evolving, eventually gaining the ability to speak and reason instead of just attacking. But despite this very drastic change, he gets completely sidelined by Ikaris. It's actually a bit comical how he randomly washes ashore at the final battle, and instead of the Eternals banding together to fight him, which is very much what they were hinting at considering at how easily he was able to defeat them time and time again before, he becomes a mere side quest for Thena. Granted, Thena defeating Crow made dramatic sense, as Crow defeated Gilgamesh, and in this way she gets to avenge him. But at the same time, it underscores the threat that Crow had been throughout the film, as he is defeated by only one Eternal while he is at peak power, Gilgamesh being kind of a part of him notwithstanding. In sum, the prolonged fight sequence is fun to watch with clear stakes, but is only hindered by how the story made such a drastic pivot in the third act from shifting the villain from Crow to Ikaris. The cinematography throughout the sequence and throughout the film really continually emphasizes how small our protagonists are in relation to the environment around them. Take a look at this shot where Ikaris and Sprite stare off into the distance. They are a tiny part of the frame. The same framing is echoed just a bit later when some of the Eternals are using their powers to deflect debris. It's a good framing tool to set up power dynamics. In this case, the gigantically framed threat is still no match for our heroes. It fits well with the epic scope of the story, where you always want to emphasize the human scale of things. But now let's get to the meat and potatoes of the fight we're looking at today, of Ikaris versus the Eternals, which is actually broken down into a couple sub-fights. We've got Ikaris versus Thena, which is followed by barely there Ikaris versus Druig, that then proceeds to Ikaris versus Makkari, briefly turns into Ikaris versus Thena, Phastos, and Makkari, reaches a fairly lengthy stalemate with Ikaris versus Phastos, and ends with Ikaris confronting Sersi. Of course, there are other small fights in between this large fight as well, but they don't involve Ikaris. Aside from the massive airport battle in Civil War, this is one of the most exciting superhero versus superhero power spectacles there has been in the MCU so far. Everyone has a very established set of powers, and it's a blast to see them interacting with one another. And not only that, it's shot and edited in such a way that the powers are left plenty of room to breathe, and the audience can follow along with what's going on in the frame. For example, when Ikaris is fighting Makkari, the camera zooms along with her, only cutting when she exits frame or the action would be better viewed from another angle. Probably the most epic shot of the fight happens right here. Makkari is framed as if she were the protagonist in a video game, with the camera set right behind her. Meanwhile, Ikaris is the boss in said video game, launching projectile attacks, which she skillfully dodges time and time again until she counterattacks. The shot then cuts as she wails on Ikaris with a multi-layered speed attack. It was such an effective sequence because not only was it framed in an angle which made it feel like the audience was running alongside her, it was also not hampered by multiple cuts. There are only two shots in this sequence, one to see her running and one to see her counterattack. This sort of framing and editing continues in the subsequent battles as the camera zips and whirls around with the intent of better showing the action, never trying to hide it. This is probably the biggest advantage when you're dealing with a fight that mainly involves computer-generated characters. You don't have to hide stunt doubles, and you don't even have to worry about the limitations of a physical camera either. you're given complete creative control, and as played out as it may sound, your only limit is your imagination. And rendering time, that's important too. Another reason as to why this battle works so well is that each of the characters wears a very easily distinguishable color and costume. If you'd like to learn more about character design, I highly recommend checking out Ed Wojciech's class on how to design characters for comics, games, and animation. It's a great class that takes you through each major process involved in creating a character of your very own, starting from working on your character's origin story to doing rough sketches of the anatomy of said character. Color theory is also discussed, which is how colors evoke certain feelings and how that's used to highlight the personality of your character. The class also goes over your character's silhouette and how all these aspects should be reflected in your character's final costume choice. It's a fascinating course, and even if you're not thinking of creating a character yourself, it's still great to look at a couple of your favorite characters through an entirely different perspective. If all of this sounds interesting to you, you could try it out for free by just clicking on the link in the description. The first 1,000 people to use this link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Prior to learning about character design, I personally joined Skillshare because it's helped in refining skills and hobbies I've been interested in. If you've seen my other videos, you've known that I've learned great tips to better my drawing, as well as leveling up my technique with the bow staff and my martial arts skills too. Skillshare offers a vast array of classes on varied topics like photography, language, graphic design, illustration, and martial arts. There are no ads, and classes are broken down into individual segments that are automatically saved when you complete watching them. The whole catalog also has subtitles in Spanish and French, among other languages. So if you'd like to start your own journey of discovery on whatever topic you'd like, click the link in the description below. Having taken a look at the cinematography and editing, as well as the story and stakes of the Eternals, it's time we move on to the fight choreography. When dealing with superpowered opponents, one could be tempted to rely entirely on punches and throws. For the most part, this fight does well with just that. But there are a couple other martial arts techniques scattered throughout the fights as well, so let's take a look at them. First up, we got a technique that the Goddess of War inspired character had to have in her arsenal if she was to be considered a true warrior. And that is the... It's a technique that's featured in several martial arts, including Taekwondo, and its main objective is to push the opponent back. In this case, Thena propels Ikaris several feet backwards. Thena also throws a quick knee strike in her earlier one-on-one battle with Ikaris. Ikaris at one point counters Thena with the ever-popular judo technique, Ippon Seo Nage, or one-arm shoulder throw. In this technique, the goal is to use the opponent's arm as leverage to flip them over you. In this case, since we're dealing with super-powered foes, Ikaris is able to launch Thena several feet into the air. When Makari quickly dodges one of Ikaris's blasts, she's actually doing a super-powered variation of the butterfly kick, as it's known in Wushu Kung Fu. As far as the rest of the fight choreography goes in this scene, it's top-notch in terms of well-done presentation fighting. The powers are all consistent and interact in ways which seem plausible and entertaining. The Eternals featured an incredibly long battle sequence for its final act of the film that was broken down into smaller subsequences, and it never lost sight of its human scale or what was happening in each given fight. Although Crow was not given much time to shine as a villain in the final act, this was an excellent superhero versus superhero action sequence. This episode of Fight Scene Breakdown was brought to you by Skillshare. I'd like to thank each one of my Patreon members as their contribution helped in the making of this video. If you'd like to contribute and appear in the credits in the future, my Patreon page is Godzillarex and it's in the description below. Thanks for watching. What did you think of Eternals? What other character would you like for me to analyze? Let me know in the comments below, subscribe for more awesome videos, and see you next time.